The night was bleeding rain and wind when the black car raced along the coastal highway, headlights cutting through fog like trembling blades of light. The sea roared below, angry and endless. Ethan Ward gripped the wheel tighter as thunder cracked. Above them the storm was wild, but not wilder than the silence between him and Isabella. She sat beside him, her hands trembling on her lap, her eyes glimmering with defiance and heartbreak. She had cried before they left the mansion, but now she was too tired to cry anymore. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Ethan, I can't breathe in your world anymore. I'm not one of them." "I never was." Ethan's jaw tightened, his reflection flashing in the glass. A man of power, fortune, and control, yet completely powerless when it came to her. "Don't say that you're my wife. You belong with me. You think you can just walk away from everything we built?" She turned to him, her eyes soft but steady. "I never belonged to your world, Ethan. Not really. I just wanted you. I wanted love, not walls of gold. Your mother looks at me like I'm dirt, and you stand there in silence. You call that love?" Her words pierced him deeper than the storm ever could. He slammed his hand against the wheel. "Damn it, Isabella, I was trying to protect you from her, from everyone. You don't understand what it's like to live in that house." She let out a bitter laugh. "Maybe not, but I understand what it feels like to live without a heartbeat. That's what your world does to me. It kills me." Slowly, the car swerved slightly as a gust of wind hit the side mirror. Lightning split the sky in half. The cliffs glistened ahead, slick and shining. Ethan's heart pounded faster. He wanted to stop to reach for her hand, but pride was louder than love. He whispered, "Then go. If that's what you want, go." She looked out the window, tears hidden by the rain. "You'll regret saying that, Ethan. You'll regret letting me walk away." Before he could answer, the road ahead exploded in mud and rock, a landslide. Roaring from the hill above like a living beast, Ethan shouted her name, slammed the brakes, but the tires spun uselessly. The cliff gave way beneath them, and the car plunged into darkness. The sea swallowed them whole. Glass-shattered metal screamed. His body hit cold water, and pain shot through every nerve. He saw flashes of white and silver, Isabella's hand reaching toward him, bubbles escaping her mouth. He reached back, but the current tore them apart, then nothing. When he woke, he was in a hospital bed, soaked in bruises and silence. They told him she was gone. They told him the sea never gave back what it took. Divers searched for days, but her body was never found. The media called it tragedy. Some whispered scandal. His mother said it was fate, but Ethan knew it was punishment. He built his empire higher and higher, yet each brick felt heavier with guilt. He stopped smiling. He stopped living. 10 years later, he stood again on that same coast, waves lashing against stone, wind tearing through his coat. His voice barely carried above the sea. "If there's any justice left in the world, bring her back to me." The waves crashed as if answering his prayer, and for a moment under the lightning's flash, he thought he saw her silhouette in the mist. Then it was gone, swallowed by the sea like the secret it refused to release. 10 years had passed since the storm stole everything. Ethan Ward had built an empire so vast that his name had become legend. But behind the glass walls of his success, he was a man turned to stone. People saw power. They did not see the sleepless nights, the untouched piano, the letters written to a ghost. He still called wife every morning. He read the same newspaper, and every night he poured a drink for a woman who never came home. On the 10th anniversary of the crash, Ethan returned to the cliffs alone. He stood in the wind as the sea roared beneath him, his hair now threaded with silver, his heart still bound to her memory. He closed his eyes and whispered her name, Isabella, and in that moment lightning flashed again like it had the night she vanished, as if the sky was mocking him, reminding him that he had loved and lost. His mother Eleanor watched him from afar through the tinted glass of her car, her lips curved into the kind of smile that carried secrets. She never forgave the woman who had stolen her son's devotion, and she never planned to let him find peace. She spoke to her driver. It's time he remarried. It's time he remembered who he is. The next day she invited him to dinner and introduced Sabrina Vale, the daughter of a powerful investor, graceful, intelligent, and everything Eleanor thought a wife should be. Ethan sat there emotionless until Sabrina mentioned. Archie said she had recently visited a small gallery in Lisbon and seen a haunting painting of a woman standing by the sea. The colours were strange, almost alive, signed only with the letter. The fork slipped from Ethan's hand. His pulse quickened. His eyes met Sabrina's. "Where did you say you saw it?" She smiled. "In Lisbon, a small gallery by the harbour." "Why do you ask?" Ethan did not answer. He left the table before the dessert arrived. He drove through the night rain, pounding his windshield. As memories clawed back the smell of paint on Isabella's hands, the way she mixed ocean blues to capture the sky on her canvas. When he reached his mansion, he went straight to his study, opened the drawer where he kept their old photographs, and found one of her painting by the sea. The colours were the same, the brushstroke unmistakable. He felt a tremor run through him. She was gone for 10 years, but her art was alive. He picked up the phone, called his private investigator. "Find this gallery." "Find who painted it now?" 3 days later, the report arrived. The gallery existed, owned by a woman named Maria Alvarez, a retired nurse, and among her featured artists was someone named Isla Ruiz. Ethan stared at the name, whispering it like a forgotten melody. Isla Ruiz. The investigator said she lost her memory 10 years ago, found unconscious near the same coast where your wife's car went off. The cliff. Ethan's hands shook as he read the file. Every detail pulled him deeper into disbelief. Her height, her features, her birthmark, though faintly described, matched Isabella's. He sank into the chair, the air thick with something between hope and fear. What if it was her? What if fate had hidden her, not taken her? What if the storm had spared her? To test him, he spent that night walking through the empty halls of his mansion. Every portrait, every echo of her laughter seemed to call him toward the truth. At dawn, he stood before his jet, ready to leave for Lisbon. His reflection in the glass showed not the millionaire the world knew, but the man who had loved once and lost everything, now chasing a ghost that felt alive again. As the plane rose into the clouds, Ethan felt his heart beat with something he had not known in a decade, not in power, not control, but a dangerous flicker of hope. He whispered into the hum of the engines, "If you are out there, Isabella, I will find you, even if it kills me." The city of Lisbon shimmered under the morning sun, its narrow streets glowing with golden light, but Ethan Ward felt none of its beauty. His heart beat like thunder as he stepped out of the car and looked up at the small seaside gallery. The sign above the door read, "Casa do Mar, the House of the Sea." He pushed open the door, and the smell of paint and salt filled the air. Inside the gallery, every wall breathed color waves, skies, storms, and faces hidden in mist. One painting caught his eyes. It was her standing near a rocky coast wearing a white dress. The brushstrokes were trembling yet alive, her eyes looking straight through the canvas, straight into his soul. The signature at the bottom was small but clear. The letter I behind him a gentle voice spoke, soft and uncertain. "She reminds you of someone, doesn't she?" Ethan turned and froze. The woman before him looked like a dream that dared to live again, her hair shorter than before, her skin touched by the sun, her eyes calm but distant. Her name tag read Isla Ruiz. She smiled politely. "Can I help you, sir?" He could barely breathe. His mind screamed her name, but his lips said nothing. He followed her as she walked to a corner of the room, explaining the meaning behind the paintings. Her voice was melodic, almost like a song he used to know. She said, "Sometimes when I paint the sea, I feel like it is calling someone back, maybe someone who was lost." Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to shout that it was him she had called back, but He stayed silent, afraid she would vanish like smoke. Maria Alvarez, the gallery owner, came forward to greet him, an older woman with wise eyes. She noticed his stare and spoke gently. "You have seen her before, haven't you?" Ethan looked away, his voice low. "She reminds me of someone I lost." Maria sighed. "Many people come here and say the same, but none stay long because some ghosts don't want to be found." As Ethan left that day, he felt the world spinning beneath his feet. He walked down to the harbour, where waves broke against the stone. His thoughts crashed louder than the tide. What if it really was her? What if fate had stolen her memories to punish him? What if he was not meant to find her? He returned to the gallery every day, pretending to admire the art while secretly studying her movements, the way she tucked her hair, the way she bit her lip when she painted. It was all her own evening as the sun burned red over the water. He saw her standing outside the gallery, watching the sea. Her face soft with longing. He walked up beside her quietly. "You paint storms," he said. Why she turned and looked at him for the first time, without the polite distance in her eyes. Because she whispered, "Storms are honest. They destroy, but they also reveal what survives." Ethan's heart broke open. She did not remember him, but her soul still spoke the same language as his. He wanted to tell her everything, yet something in Maria's eyes every time he visited told him to wait. One night as he prepared to leave Lisbon, he saw Maria slip an old photograph into a drawer, a picture of a woman on a hospital bed, face bandaged, eyes closed. The caption said, "Unidentified survivor found near Santa Cruz coast 10 years ago." His breath caught. The date matched the night of the crash. He knew now he was not chasing ghosts, he was chasing truth. He left the gallery in silence, but his hands were trembling with rage and wonder. Someone had hidden her. Someone had stolen 10 years of their lives. And he would not rest until he knew who and why. Ethan Ward could not sleep the night he found that photograph. The image of the woman in the hospital bed haunted him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her hand bandaged but delicate, and he remembered. The same small scar on Isabella's wrist from when she had burned herself cooking years ago. It was her, he was certain now. But why was she here? Why had no one told him? Why had Maria kept her hidden? The next morning he returned to the gallery before it opened. The door was unlocked, and the scent of turpentine filled the air. He walked past the new paintings and found Isla standing in front of a canvas, her back turned. The painting showed a man's silhouette standing before the sea with a broken chain around his wrist, she said without looking up. "I don't know why I paint him, but he comes to me in dreams. He calls my name, but I never see his face." Ethan stepped closer and whispered, "What does he call you?" She turned slowly, her eyes clouded. "I think he says Isabella, but I don't know who that is." His chest tightened. His knees nearly gave way. The truth was within reach, but so was danger. He noticed Maria standing in the doorway, her face pale with worry. She said, "Mr. Ward, we need to talk." "Outside, please." When they stepped into the alley behind the gallery, her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "You have to stop coming here. She doesn't remember you, and if she starts to remember everything, it might kill her." Ethan frowned. "What? Are you hiding Maria?" Her eyes glistened. "She was brought to me by a woman after the accident 10 years ago. That woman paid me to keep her safe and silent. She said the world she came from would destroy her. Who was she?" Ethan demanded, but Maria shook. "Her head. She gave me money. No name, no reason, only one instruction: if anyone ever came asking for her, I must say she died." Ethan's voice hardened. "And you obeyed?" She looked at him with pain. "You don't understand. She was broken. She woke screaming. Every night she didn't know her own name. And when I told her she had a husband, she cried for hours saying he would come for her. But he never did." Ethan turned away, shame slicing through him. He whispered, "I didn't know. I thought she was gone as." They spoke. A shadow moved near the corner of the alley. Daniel Cross, Ethan's closest friend, was watching from his car. He had followed Ethan across the ocean, not out of loyalty, but out of fear. He called a number on his phone and said softly, "He..." Bound her. Eleanor's voice came through cold and sharp. "Keep him away from her. If she remembers the truth, everything we built will collapse." That evening, Ethan returned once more to the gallery. Pretending to buy a painting, he asked Isla if she would let him commission a portrait. She agreed, her tone professional, but something flickered in her eyes as if a forgotten flame had sparked. He sat across from her as she began to paint. Every stroke carried familiarity. She murmured softly, "I feel like I have painted you before." He smiled faintly, maybe in another life, as the sun set outside. She stopped painting and stared at him, her expression distant. She whispered, "The strangest thing I keep dreaming of, a car, a storm, and someone shouting." "My name." Ethan's heart froze. He said, "What happens next?" She looked down, trembling. "I fall into the water and a woman's voice screams, 'Let her go.' I don't know whose voice it is, but it feels cruel." Ethan could barely breathe. He knew that voice. It was his mother's. When he left the gallery that night, the rain had started again. The same kind of rain that had taken everything from him 10 years ago. He stood under it, whispering to the storm, "If this is your test, I will pass it. I will bring her back, no matter who stands in my way." And somewhere in the distance, hidden behind the glow of the city lights, a woman watched them both and whispered into the phone, "He knows." The next morning, the city was silent under a grey sky. The storm from the night before had left puddles shimmering across the cobblestone streets. Ethan walked back to the gallery, his mind restless with everything Maria had confessed. Every step echoed like a countdown. He pushed open the door and found the room empty, except for a new canvas on the easel. The paint still wet, a dark sea under a bolt of lightning, and two silhouettes facing each other. One of them broken, the other reaching out for help. He touched the corner of the painting and whispered her name. Behind him, a soft voice said, "You came back." Ethan turned. Isla stood in the doorway, her hair loose, her hands covered in paint. She looked fragile, yet stronger than before. She said, "I finished the portrait you asked for, but when I painted your face, I cried, and I don't know why." Ethan walked closer, his voice shaking. "Maybe you remembered something." Her eyes shimmered. "Maybe I remembered what it feels like to lose someone." She uncovered the painting, and there it was, his face, but not the one the world knew. This was Ethan from 10 years ago. Young, hopeful eyes filled with love. She said softly, "I don't know who you are, but I've seen you before in dreams, in the storm, in the water." Ethan stepped forward, took her trembling hand and whispered, "Because we were once everything to each other." She looked at him confused before tears spilled down her cheeks. Maria rushed into the room, her face pale. "Stop," she shouted, "please, stop." She turned to Ethan, her voice breaking. "You don't understand. She's not ready. Her memories come in pieces like shards. They can hurt her." Ethan looked at her with anger. "Tell me the truth, Maria. Who brought her here? What are you protecting?" Maria looked down, trembling. "Your mother." "Ethan, it was your mother. She found her after the accident. She paid me to keep her hidden. She said it was for her safety. But she also said if you ever found her, you'd destroy her." Ethan's body went still, his world spinning in disbelief. "My mother knew she was alive all this time." Before Maria could answer, the door burst open and two men in black suits entered. One of them handed Maria a sealed envelope and said, "Miss Alvarez, this is your final payment. You and your artist friend will be leaving Lisbon tonight." Ethan stepped in front of them. His voice thundered, "You will not touch her." The men looked at each other, and one of them said, "We have orders from Eleanor." Wardesla clutched her head. The noise, the shouting, the fear, it all tore through her. She fell to her knees, whispering fragments of memory, rain, glass, water, Ethan shouting her name. Then silence. Ethan dropped beside her, holding her face. "It's me. It's Ethan, I found you." She looked into his eyes and something broke free. She gasped, "Ethan," and for a moment he saw recognition, pure and raw, before she collapsed unconscious in his arms. Maria screamed for help as Ethan carried her to the car. He drove through the storm like a man chased by ghosts, thunder roaring above. He whispered over and over, "Don't leave me again. Not now, not after I've found you." When they reached the small house near the shore, Maria helped him lay Isla on the couch, her breathing shallow, her pulse weak. Ethan looked at Maria, his voice full of rage and sorrow. "If my mother did this, I'll make sure she never hurts anyone again." Maria handed him the envelope. The men had left inside was a photograph of Eleanor standing beside the wrecked car from that night, untouched by grief and smiling at the camera, as if she had won. Ethan stared at it, his heart breaking into fury. The storm outside cracked with lightning. As he whispered to himself, she wanted to erase her. But she forgot something. "You can't erase love, and now she will pay for what she did," then flew back to New York with fury burning through his veins. The private jet sliced through dark clouds, but all he could see was his mother's face in that photograph smiling beside. The wreck that had taken his life away 10 years ago, when he landed, he went straight to the mansion, the one that had once echoed with laughter, now heavy with secrets. He walked through the marble hallway and found her in the garden, sipping tea. Like nothing had ever happened, Eleanor Ward looked up calm as a queen returning from war. She said, "Welcome home, Ethan. I thought you were in Europe closing business deals." He threw the photograph on the table, his voice low and sharp. "You were at the crash site that night. You knew she was alive." Eleanor did not flinch. She simply sighed. "So you finally know she was never good for you, Ethan. Her disappearance saved you, saved our legacy." Ethan's voice broke. "You call that saving me? You destroyed me. She was my wife. She was my life." Elena rose slowly, her tone icy. "You were weak. She made you forget who you were. I did what I had to do to protect this family." Ethan took a step forward, eyes blazing. "You had her hidden for 10 years. You bought her silence. You let me believe she was dead." Eleanor smiled. "That woman was poison. She would have ruined everything you built." Ethan leaned closer, voice trembling. "You built this empire on lies and blood. You took away the only person who made me human." For the first time her calm cracked. She slapped him, her voice rising. "You are my son, and you will not throw this family's name away for a woman who never belonged." He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, his voice quiet, almost. "Breaking you stopped being my mother the night you decided to play God." He turned and walked away, her shouts echoing through the house. "You will regret this. Ethan, if she remembers everything, you will lose everything." He left without another word, his heart pounding like thunder. When he reached his car, he saw a figure waiting by the gate. It was Daniel, his best friend turned ghost from the past. Daniel's face was pale, his hands shaking. Ethan stepped out and glared at him. "You knew, didn't you?" Daniel looked away, shame cutting through his voice. "I did. Eleanor told me it was just to protect you. I falsified the report. I thought she wanted to keep the press away. I didn't know she meant to bury the truth." Ethan grabbed him by the collar. "You helped her hide my wife?" Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. "Yes, but I can fix it. I recorded everything. I have proof." Ethan released him, his voice raw. "Then use it." Daniel handed him a flash drive and whispered, "Be careful. She has eyes everywhere." Before disappearing into the night, Ethan sat in the car, staring at the drive in his hand. The last piece of the puzzle. He drove straight to his office, inserted it into his computer, and watched the video play on screen. His mother's voice filled the room, cold and proud. She said, "She will not come between us again. Make sure the world thinks she is dead." Ethan closed his eyes. The storm outside rattled the windows, thunder roaring like the echo of his rage. At that same moment, across the ocean, Isla woke in Maria's cottage, her body weak, her head pounding, fragments of memory flashing, the crash, the scream, the cold water. She gasped. "Ethan," she whispered. Maria ran to her side, tears in her eyes. "You remember, don't you?" Isla nodded, barely breathing. "I remember everything, and he's in danger." As lightning split the sky over New York, Ethan stood before the window, whispering to the night. "It ends now, and far away in Lisbon. A woman who once forgot everything remembered enough to save him." The rain over New York had not stopped for days, as if the sky itself refused to forgive what had been done. Ethan Ward stood by his window, staring at the skyline that once felt like victory. Now it only looked like a cage. He could not sleep since the night he saw the video, every echo of his mother's voice repeated in his head. "She will not come between us again." Her words had become a curse. His phone rang at midnight. A call from Portugal. Maria's trembling voice came through. She remembers. "Ethan." She remembers everything. Ethan's heart raced. He wanted to speak to her, to hear her voice, but Maria said, "Wait, someone is watching us. I saw a man near the house, the same one who delivered those letters from your mother years ago." Ethan's breath caught the reach of Eleanor's control, was everywhere. He whispered, "Keep her safe, Maria. I'm coming." Within hours, Ethan was on his jet again, the storm chasing him across the ocean. When he landed, he went straight to the cottage. The air smelled of sea and wet wood. He opened the door and saw her sitting by the window, her hair unbound, her hands trembling around a mug of tea. When she looked up, her eyes were no longer empty. They were full of tears and memory. She whispered, "Ethan," and the sound of her voice broke every wall inside him. He fell to his knees before her, saying, "I thought I lost you forever." Isabella touched his face gently, her hand cold but real. She said, "I remember everything. The crash, your mother, the voice telling someone to let me drown." Ethan felt his heart stop. He said, "She did it. She kept you hidden for 10 years. Isabella nodded, but her face showed something deeper. She said, "Ethan, it wasn't just her." There was another voice, a man's voice. I heard him saying, "He couldn't do it, that he would take me somewhere safe." Ethan froze. "Daniel." Maria came in holding a letter, her face pale. This was left at the door. No name, no address. Ethan took it inside. Was a single line. "She must never learn the whole truth, or she will hate you too." Ethan felt his world tilt. What did that mean? Isabella stepped closer, fear in her eyes. "What haven't you told me, Ethan?" His voice shook. "There is nothing, I swear." But she stepped back, her voice rising. "Tell me the truth now." Ethan, before he could answer, headlights cut through the window. A car pulled up outside. Men stepped out, black coats glistening with rain. Maria gasped. "They found us." Ethan grabbed Isabella's hand. "Run." They fled through the back door into the forest. Behind the cottage, branches slapping their faces, the sound of footsteps following them, the rain turning the path to mud. Ethan led her toward the cliffs, the same cliffs where their lives had shattered 10 years ago. They reached the edge, the sea, roaring below, men's voices shouting behind them. Ethan turned to face them, his voice steel. "Tell her, you will never control us again." Eleanor stepped out of the darkness, umbrella in hand, her expression cold as marble. She said, "You never understood. Ethan, love makes you weak." She looked at Isabella, her eyes full of disdain. "I should have ended it when I had the chance." Before she could say another word, a flash of light came from the hill. Daniel appeared soaked and pale, holding a gun. He shouted, "It's over, Eleanor. I'm done covering for you." Ethan pulled Isabella behind him. The men aimed their weapons. Thunder rolled over the sea. Daniel threw a file at Ethan's feet, shouting, "The truth is in there. She's not who you think she is." Ethan picked it up, confusion washing over him. Daniel's voice broke. "She's your mother's daughter from another man. You fell in love with your own blood." The world stopped. Lightning cracked across the sky. Isabella gasped, stepping back. "No, that can't be true." Daniel fell to his knees, saying, "I'm sorry, I tried to stop her." Ethan stared at Eleanor, whose face twisted with both pride and madness. She whispered, "I did it to protect you." Ethan turned away from her, his voice shaking. "No, you did it too. Destroy me." And in that moment, everything he ever believed shattered with the rain and the sound of the sea below. The storm had swallowed the cliffs by the time the truth shattered between them. Lightning slashed across the sky, revealing Ethan's face twisted with disbelief. Isabella stood frozen, unable to breathe, her mind rejecting what Daniel had screamed. The sea below raged like it carried every secret ever buried. Ethan's voice broke through the wind. "Tell me you're lying, Daniel. Please tell me this is not true." But Daniel only dropped to his knees, crying, "I wish I was lying." Isabella's heart raced, her thoughts spinning. "I am not her daughter. I can't be," she whispered. But the memory flashed in her head, a faint image of a young girl's hand being held by a woman with the same cold eyes as Eleanor Ward. Her pulse faltered. Ethan looked at his mother, the fury in his eyes uncontainable. He shouted, "What did you do, Eleanor? Why would you destroy her life and mine?" Eleanor stepped closer, her face trembling between arrogance and madness. "I protected you, Ethan. I kept you pure of scandal. She was born from your father's mistake. I took her in. I gave her a new name. You should thank me." Isabella covered her mouth, tears running down her face. "You took my name. You took my life." Ethan turned to her, his voice trembling. "This doesn't change what we had." But she stepped back, shaking her head. "Doesn't it? We were never supposed to find each other. We were living someone else's lie." She ran into the darkness, her sobs drowned by the storm. Ethan tried to follow, but Daniel grabbed his arm. "Don't go. She needs time." Ethan pushed him away. "You've done enough." Hours later, Isabella wandered along the coastal path, her mind filled with fragments of memories, faces blending with the sound of the ocean. She saw a small chapel down the hill, its doors half open, candles flickering. She stepped inside, the air heavy with salt and silence. She fell to her knees before the altar, whispering to the dark, "Whoever you are, God Fate, whatever you call yourself, why did you bring me back just to break me again?" Back on the cliffs, Eleanor turned to Daniel, her voice sharp. "You fool, I told you never to tell them." Daniel's voice cracked. "It had to end. Someone had to stop you." Eleanor laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "You think you've stopped me? I've prepared for this for years. Ethan will come home. He always does. He belongs to me." But she was wrong. Ethan didn't come home. He went to the city police station, carrying the files Daniel had given him, the flash drive and every piece of proof he had. He told the officer, "I want to report a crime. 10 years of kidnapping, fraud and lies." The officer looked at the evidence and said, "This will destroy her." Ethan replied, "Then let it destroy her." Meanwhile, Isabella sat in the chapel until dawn. When the first light touched the stained glass, she saw a familiar shadow in the doorway. Ethan stood there, drenched, his face pale with exhaustion. He said quietly, "I don't care what blood runs through our veins. I care about what beats in your heart." She looked at him, her voice breaking. "How can you still love me?" He walked closer, because love is the only truth that survived her lees. But before she could answer, a sound echoed from outside, tires, screeching metal. Clashing, the front door burst open. Daniel stumbled in, bleeding, clutching his side. He gasped, "She's coming. She won't let either of you leave alive." And then he fell unconscious on the chapel floor, as the first sirens wailed in the distance, and the sea outside began to rise with the morning tide. The church was filled with the smell of burning wax and blood as Daniel lay motionless on the floor, his breathing shallow. Maria burst through the doors. Moments later, her clothes soaked with rain. She fell beside him, pressing her hands over his. "Won't stay with us," she whispered. "Stay with us." Ethan tore his coat off and helped stop the bleeding, but Daniel's eyes flickered open only long enough to whisper one last secret. "The papers in Eleanor's vault prove everything she planned it. From the beginning, not to protect you, but to own you, Ethan. She wanted to erase everyone who ever loved you." His voice faded, and the storm outside answered with a roar. Isabella stood frozen, her face pale, her mind still reeling from everything the night had thrown at her. Ethan turned to her and said, "I'm going to finish this tonight." She caught his arm. "No, Ethan, she's dangerous. Don't go alone." He looked at her, the love and pain in his eyes tangled together. "If I don't end this now, she will never stop. She will find us again." He drove through the flooded streets toward the Ward estate, lightning guiding him like fate itself. The gates stood open like jaws waiting to swallow him inside the mansion. Every light was on, but the halls were silent. His footsteps echoed against the marble floors until he saw her Eleanor Ward, sitting in the grand hall, wearing the same silver gown she had worn the night of the crash. She smiled like a queen who had never lost a war. "I was wondering when you would come home, Ethan." He walked closer, his voice steady. "You ruined every life you touched. You lied, you manipulated, and for what?" Her eyes flashed. "To keep what was mine, to keep you. You were my masterpiece, Ethan, my perfect creation. I could not let some artist from nowhere take you away." He clenched his fists. "She was not just an artist. She was my wife, my world. Your greed killed her once, and you tried to kill her again." Eleanor rose from her chair, her face twisted with pride. "I made you powerful, and you repay me with betrayal." Ethan reached into his coat, pulled out a small recorder, and played her own words from the file. Her voice filled the hall, cold and cruel. "I will make sure the world thinks she is dead. This time I will." When Eleanor's smile broke the first crack of fear showing in her eyes, she whispered, "You wouldn't dare expose me." Ethan stepped closer. "I already did. The police are on their way." She looked around as if the walls were closing in. Then, in one last, desperate act, she reached for the gun hidden under the table. The shot echoed through the hall, glass shattered everywhere. Ethan fell to his knees, clutching his arm, blood running between his fingers before she could fire again. Another gunshot rang. Out from the doorway, Isabella stood there, her hands shaking, her eyes full of tears. She whispered, "You don't get to hurt him again." Eleanor staggered back, the gun falling from her hand, her body collapsing to the marble floor as the sound of sirens filled the night, then struggled to his feet, his arm bleeding but his eyes fixed on Isabella. She dropped the gun and ran to him, holding him as the red and blue lights flashed through the broken windows. She sobbed, "I didn't want to do it." He held her tight, whispering, "You saved me again." Later, as dawn broke over the mansion, the police carried Daniel out alive, barely breathing, but alive. Ethan stood on the balcony with Isabella, the city waking beneath them. She looked at him, her voice soft. "It's over." Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. There's one thing left to do." He handed her a key, the one to Eleanor's private vault. Together they opened it. Inside were hundreds of files, letters and photographs, proof of every lie, every person she had hurt. Among them was one sealed envelope marked for Ethan. He opened it slowly. Inside was a confession, written in his mother's elegant handwriting. "I destroyed everything because I was afraid of losing you. But the real truth is, she was never your sister. She was the daughter of my enemy. I lied because I wanted you to hate her, not love her. Forgive me if you can." Isabella covered her mouth in shock. Ethan dropped to his knees, the truth washing over him like a final wave. She was never his sister. She had never been forbidden. Their love had been pure from the beginning, and now, finally, after 10 years of pain, the storm had passed. He took her face in his hands and whispered, "You were never my sin. You were always my salvation." The morning after the storm, the city felt strangely quiet. The sky washed clean after a decade of secrets. Ethan stood on the balcony of his penthouse, the sun rising over the skyline, his arm wrapped in bandages, his heart still heavy with everything that had happened below him. The world moved on as if it had not witnessed betrayal and blood the night before, but inside him everything had changed. Isabella walked toward him barefoot, her hair loose in the morning breeze, her eyes soft but tired. She said, softly, "The police called. Your mother's will was read. She left everything to you. He looked at her and said, then we will give it all away. She ruined too many lives for her name to own anything anymore. They went together to the old Ward Foundation, building and renamed it the Second Sunrise. It would become a place for women and children who had lost everything to power and greed, the same kind of pain that had once chained Isabella. Now it would free others, but peace was not instant. Some nights, Ethan woke sweating from dreams of the crash, the waves, the gunfire, and her voice calling his name through the water one night. He sat up unable to breathe and found Isabella standing by the window, the moonlight painting her face in silver. She turned to him and said, "Do you ever think we were meant to survive to fix what was broken?" He walked to her, took her hand and whispered, "Maybe the universe breaks us first so we can learn how to heal others." She smiled faintly. "That sounds like something the man I married would say." He smiled back. "Maybe he's finally becoming that man again." Months passed. The world wrote stories about the fall of the Ward Empire. The headlines called it the redemption of Ethan Ward, but he did not care about reputation or power anymore. All he cared about was the woman who had come back from death itself one afternoon, as they walked along the same cliffs where it had all begun. The wind soft. This time the sea calm. Isabella stopped and looked out at the horizon. She said, "This is where I thought it would all end." He said, "No, this is where we start again." She laughed quietly. "I can't believe after everything we're still here." He touched her face and said, "I can, because love like ours doesn't die. It waits." As they walked further, they saw Maria waving from a small cottage near the hill. She had turned it into a small art school. Children were painting by the fence, and one of them ran to Isabella, handing her a shell, shaped like a heart. Isabella knelt and smiled. "Thank you," she said. "Where did you find it?" The child pointed at the tide line near the rocks. Ethan and Isabella followed the child's trail, and there among the wet sand lay a piece of metal twisted and rusted. Ethan picked it up and froze. It was part of their old car. The ocean had finally returned what it took. Isabella looked at the fragment and whispered, "It's like the sea wanted us to have it back." Ethan placed it in her hand and said, "Then let it remind us that even the deepest storms end someday." She looked at him, her eyes filled with tears and light. "Ethan, there's something I never told you. When Maria found me, I was pregnant." The words hit him like thunder. She looked away, trembling. "I lost the baby in the crash, but I felt it for a while, and sometimes I think that's what kept me alive." Ethan pulled her close, his voice breaking. "You don't need to carry that pain alone anymore. We will build a new life, one that honors everything we lost." A year later, the foundation grew across cities. Their story became a symbol of healing one evening as the sun melted into gold over the ocean. They held a small ceremony on the beach. Maria and the children from the art school gathered around. Isabella stood barefoot in the sand, wearing a white dress, her hands covered in paint. She smiled at Ethan as he walked toward her, carrying a small box. Inside was a new ring forged from the silver melted out of the wreck of their car. He took her hand and said, "I once promised you forever, and then I lost you. Now I've found you again, so I promise forever twice." She whispered, "I do again. And this time no storms will take me away." As the tide touched their feet, they kissed under the setting sun. The crowd clapped the wind, carried their laughter over the water, and for the first time in 10 years, the world around them felt whole. Again, the man who had lost everything finally understood what wealth truly meant. Not gold, not power, but the courage to love again. When the last light faded, they stood hand in hand, watching the waves. Isabella said quietly, "Do you think the sea will ever forget us?" Ethan smiled. "Never. It tried to keep you and still gave you back. It will remember you longer than any name carved in stone." She rested her head against his shoulder, whispering, "Then let it remember us as two souls who found home after the storm." He kissed her hair and said, "No more pain, no more fear, only love, and the sound of the sea welcoming them home forever."